Okay, hello everyone. So in this video, we're going to be proving that the language ANBN is not regular. So in a previous video, I gave the intuition as to why this might be the case. Now we're going to use the pumping lemma to actually prove this statement, right? So the proof is going to using the pumping lemma. Okay, and so we're going to play this game, right? We're going to start with the opponent's move. So the opponent picks some integer m strictly greater than 0. That's my opponent's move. Now what I need to do is I need to pick a string, right? I need to pick a string that, of course, is in L, right? And that has length at least n, okay? So what I do is I pick the string W A M B M, right? The string has to look like A, let's say K, B, K, because that's what L is, right? In this case, what I'm doing is I'm forcing the string to have length at least M. In fact, it's going to have length exactly 2M. So the length of the string is 2M, which is certainly greater or equal to M, right? So my move is valid. So this is a valid move, right? Because the length of W is greater or equal to M. Next, my opponent picks a decomposition. So, like I said before, I can't control what the decomposition my opponent picks is, or what it looks like. The only thing I do know, though, is that I do know the decomposition has to respect this form, xyz, where xy has length at most m, and y has length at least 1. So I'm not controlling what my opponent picks, but these conditions, they tell me something about the decomposition. So this tells me that in any decomposition, my opponent makes, what's going to happen is that the decomposition xy, right, these two subparts of the string must be within the first MAs. Why? Because I have this restriction here that says that the length of xy is at most m. And so because x and y are stuck together, right, they're stuck together and there's nothing in between them, there's nothing that's before x, and there's nothing that's between x and y. X starts the string, right? So X starts the string W, and Y is directly, oh, that's not how you, directly concatenated with X, right? So I have some A's, and then I have some more A's. And at most, what can happen is I can have, say, X here, Y here, right? So this is X concat Y. There's nothing in between here. This is just the concatenation symbol. And then after that, I have my remaining string Z, right? So this is in the, I don't want to say worst case because there's no best or worst case, but for the upper bound of what XY can be in terms of length, you can have X and Y fill up the number of A's, or you could also have in the sort of lower bound case, there's no restriction on what X could be. There's only a restriction on the length of Y. The length of Y has to be at least 1. And so in the lower bound case, X could actually be empty, right? Y could be a single string A, and then the rest would be Z, But what you'll notice, and what you must notice, is that I can't assume the decomposition has a particular form. Okay? And so namely, I can't assume it has this form, nor can I assume it has this form or any form in between. Right? I just have to work off this assumption that the x and the y's are within the a's, right? And so what does this tell me, right? Concretely, this tells me then that this means that y is actually just ak, right? It's k number of a's, right? So your y is going to be somewhere. I don't know where exactly, but I know that it's going to be within the number of a's because of this upper bound on xy, right? And because of how I chose the string w to have ma's at first, right? So that's typically going to be a trick when you do the pumping lemma, is that because because you can control the choice of the string, but not how the string is decomposed, you want to force the decomposition to look like something. And to force that, here what I've done is I've said the first m letters of my string are just a's. And so because of this condition here, that forces the xy's to only be a's. And so then that forces y to only be a's. So I have y is some number of a's, say k, where k is between 1 and m, right? Because either in the lower bound case, there could be 1a, or in the upper bound case, there could be ma's, right? So this means that y is equal to k number of a's, okay? And so in that case, now I need to pump either up or down, right? And so what I can do is I choose to pump up with I is equal to 2, right? I can't use I is equal to 1 because I is equal to 1 would just be y1 is equal to x, y, z. That's just a string w. And so I pick w to belong to L, so clearly it's still going to belong to L. What I need to do is I need to either pump up, so I need to pick I at least 2, or I is 0, right? So if I pick I is equal to 2, that means that I have w2 is x, y, y, z. So what that means, right? If I had my initial string, my initial string was w1. It was ma's, and then mb's, right? And then somewhere here I had x, and then somewhere here I had y. So what's happening is I'm just inserting an extra y here. So in my w2, I'm inserting an extra y. So then I have the remaining string z, okay? But this guy, this is the new y, right? And so, oops. So now, what is the length, or now what is actually the form of my string w2? Well, I had how many number of a's initially? I had ma's, right? So the ma's came from here, and they potentially came from this extra part. But what I know I'm doing is I'm adding k extra a's, right? I'm adding k extra a's from this y, right? So this adds k more a's, right? So w2 is am, right? So this is the initial string. Now I'm adding an extra y, which is k extra a's, right? So now my resulting string is am plus k, bm. Okay, so this is my string w2, And I know, right, I know that k has to be greater or equal to 1, right, because y is a k, and by the conditions of the decomposition, k has to be at least 1, right? And so what that means is that this whole string, right, has m plus k number of a's and m b's. But this does not look like what a string in L would need to look like. Because what a string in L needs to have is that it has to have the same number of a's as b's. But clearly here, for w is equal to m am plus k bm, the number of a's is greater than the number of b's. Right? So this is the number of a's, and this is the number of b's. So I have an inequality, right? And so this inequality means that, right, therefore that means that W2 is not an L, okay? And in fact, what I've just done, actually, I've proved, right? And so therefore, I've proved that L, A, M, B, N, for n greater or equal to 0, is not regular, okay? So if we recap quite quick, just quickly here, I started with A and Bn. I wanted to A and Bn. I wanted to prove that it was not regular. I played this game. My opponent picked some integer m. Then I picked on purpose the string AMBM. AMBM because I have MAs to start. And so in the arbitrary decomposition of my opponent is still constricted or restrained in what they can pick because the decomposition they pick has to be XYZ, where XY has length at most n. And so this choice of W is clever, right? Because it forces, right? It forces the decomposition of my opponent to have Y look like AK, and Y is the thing that I'm going to pump, right? Y is the thing that I'm going to pump. In this case, I choose to pump up by saying from the original string XYZ, I add an extra string Y, right? I add an additional KAs to my string W2. So now if my original string had MAs, now what I'm doing, right, I have MAs, maybe Y is here. Now I just double the number um, of A's coming from Y, right? So I extend the string. And so that's why from the initial MAs that I have, I add KAs from this extra Y, okay? And because K has to be at least 1, right, because of this restriction on the decomposition, then the string that I pumped, or the string that resulted from pumping up, which is AM plus K, BM, is not an L because it doesn't respect this form. And so then I've proved the negation of the conditions of the pumping lemma. And so by contrapositive, this means that L is not regular. Okay, excellent. So that's actually how you formally prove, well, at least this is one way to formally prove. There's another way using the Myhill-Nerode theorem, but this is one way to prove that the language A and Bn is not regular.